The Neuradiant 1070 is a revolutionary photobiomodulation device to optimize brain health and improve brain disorders. In this video, I interviewed Dr. Marvin Berman. He's an expert when it comes to brain health, photobiomodulation, and neurofeedback. We talk about near-infrared light and the impact it has on our brain, the difference between 1070 nanometer light and 810 nanometer light, how a recent study has shown this device to be beneficial for sufferers from long COVID, the amazing developments that this device has in store for its future, and be sure to stick around because I actually get called a jerk by Dr. Berman, so you don't want to miss that. Before we kick off, I do need to point out that the Neuradiant 1070 is not a medical device and is not approved as treatment for any disease or condition. Any information presented in this interview should not be taken as medical advice or as a replacement for the recommendations of your regular health provider. So welcome to the show, Marvin, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. Our first question I have for you is, how do you pronounce your company's name and also the product's name? Because it's something that I've been struggling with.
Well, it's something I unfortunately didn't have much of a say on before it got decided. But the name of the company is Neuronic Devices Limited. And it was created by guys for whom English was not their first language.
Right. Okay.
So when I heard about it, I said, so have you guys ever heard of the word moronic? And they went, no. I said, so then you probably never heard the word neurotic. And they were like, no. I said, oh, okay, you'll find out.
And then what about the helmet itself? Or do you call this a helmet? Do you refer to it as a helmet?
I don't know. It's the photobiomodulation device, but it's called the Neuradiant.
Neuradiant. All right. I was getting it right then. That's good to know. I just thought I'd better check before I get told off when this goes live and people reach out and say, you're saying it wrong, Alex. So no, that's cool.
Neuradiant's a little easier. Yeah. Neuradiant's a little easier to live with.
Cool. So a lot of my viewers have a good understanding of red light therapy and how it works. But they might not know much about your company and your product, but also the benefits of red light therapy on the brain. Would you be able to give them a bit of an overview?
When we're talking about light therapy, we're talking about basically the effect of sunlight. And within that idea of sunlight, there's the whole electromagnetic spectrum. But what we know is that the primary wavelength that has direct impact on why, like 85% of why there's life on Earth, is because of the near-infrared spectrum, which is just above the visible spectrum of red light. So just past when you can see the color red, but those frequencies that are just above that, which are in like 700 to say about 1200 nanometers. And that light can influence and be absorbed by the mitochondria, the bacteria in our body that now is the reason that we generate our own energy, right? The bacteria, the mitochondria, absorbs the light energy from the near-infrared spectrum and the red and other color spectrums as well. But the mitochondria specifically absorbs the infrared from 700 to about 1100 nanometers. And the mitochondria have a component in them called cytochrome C oxidase. That is what's called a chromophore, which means that it absorbs and uses this light. It reacts to light in a certain bandwidth. So what happens is the cytochrome C oxidase absorbs the photons and stimulates the mitochondria to increase the output of the chemical that is the biological kind of gasoline for everything. It's called adenosine triphosphate. Most people call it ATP. So that's how it works. The ATP production is increased by the absorption of this particular band of wave frequencies delivering photons to the body or to the brain. So what we found is that your body uses up all the available ATP all the time. There's no slack. So if there's something out of whack or dysfunctional or damaged that needs to be repaired, then what's going to happen is you're going to need to increase the amount of ATP so that you really get what you need in order to make the repairs that are needed, or to enhance the capability that you're trying to enhance. If you're, say, doing exercise and you want to recover quickly from a workout, you're going to want to increase your ATP in order to then increase your recovery time or decrease your recovery time. All right. So does that cover the ground a bit?
Yeah, that's good. That's awesome, actually. So how then, what does your company do? What have you created?
So we got interested, and my original contribution here came out of the organization that I founded back in 2000 called Quiet Mind Foundation. And that's a research and consultation group based here in Philadelphia. And what we were looking at was, how can we encourage the development of non-invasive, non-drug treatments that could be added to the continuum of care that currently exists in public health care and in education. So that's what we were looking at, and we were interested in something called biofeedback, and specifically something called neurofeedback, which is when you're learning how to control the brainwave activity, the electrical activity in your brain, the EEG. And you can do that using typical reward conditioning, just having an EEG give you that kind of feedback. What happened next was that we saw that biofeedback was a training mechanism, but it wasn't actually a physiological, biological intervention. And when I started to recognize light therapy and learned about light therapy, that's when it became clear that the light could be the physiological intervention to enhance the central nervous system's ability, the brain's ability to heal itself. But once you've damaged the tissue, you have also damaged the connections electrically between the different parts of the brain. Well, in order to correct the plumbing problem, if you will, you're going to need to do something about the plumbing and the flow of blood and the flow of energy. But that's not really going to resolve the issue of the electrical connections. You see? So then you need an electrician. So getting that electrical connectivity back where it belongs and renormalizing that connectivity that was disrupted, that's what you can use the biofeedback for. Where we want to end up and what we're doing with the Neuradiant is stepping through a process of integrating the EEG measurement analysis process with the direct delivery of the photobiomodulation. So when the day comes, which won't be for another couple of years, we will then have put the EEG capability in the helmet.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
So that's how it's going to work.
So at the moment, so based on how it all works, obviously you just need to target the brain, and that's why you've come up with the helmet headset, functionality, I guess, because we see a lot of face LED red light therapy, face treatments and body treatments and knee wraps and all that. But you're going after the brain because obviously that's where the big change is, right? It's where the real change. Yeah.
And well, it's kind of like, where's the zeros and the ones?
Yeah, right. Makes sense. So then over on your website, and I'll put links to all of this below for people watching.
That's great.
Two products. You've got your 1070 and then you've got the 1070 Plus. Is this simply, is the unit itself the same? Or
yes.
are they? Okay, so what's the customer getting with the Plus that they don't get with it, basically?
Well, the point that I always want to make is that the 1070 basic unit is for somebody who's happy and they want to be happier.
Right. Yeah.
If somebody's unhappy and they want to be happy, then what they're looking for is the plus.
Mm.
So that means that there's something really, a condition, a diagnosis, or something that's going on that's got them concerned about how they're functioning. At that point, we want to be able to use the light in a very targeted way. And we want to be able to assess what's going on in the brain electrically and biochemically. We want to understand what's really going on. Plus, device is really just a change in the software that opens up different features in the helmet. And those features include the 4 quadrants of delivery of the light. So we can separate the front, the back, the left, and the right quadrants, and independently develop a protocol of stimulation for each quadrant based on time of duration of stimulation, of the intensity of the stimulation, the amount of time the light is actually being delivered, and the actual pulse frequency, the amount of times that the lights are being turned on and off. Because what we know is that when you pulse light on your scalp, you entrain your brain electrical activity to pulse at that frequency. So if I know that you're not producing enough, say 10 hertz over here on the left, we can then design the protocol so that it'll pulse 10 times a second on the left, but not anywhere else.
Makes sense.
And that is going to optimize the brain's functioning. So that's the basic difference.
So how are you getting that information? Like you used the example where one side of the brain may not be, using much alpha state brainwaves. Like where's that information coming from? Does the patient have to do an EEG?
There's another, the EEG measurement is done separately.
Yeah.
And we have relationships with clinicians all over who can do that kind of recording. They do the recording, they send it to us, we do the analysis and then program the device.
Very cool. Very cool. So you mentioned earlier when you were giving your excellent overview of red light therapy and how it works, you mentioned the wavelength range of 700 through to 1100 nanometers or thereabout. We've taken a pretty deep dive around the 810 nanometer wavelengths, but 850 in that as well. Why have you gone for the higher wavelengths, the 1070 in this instance?
With certain wavelengths, we are now seeing that there are different biological effects. So one of the things that we found, and this was done by researchers at the University of Texas, Arlington, Texas, Professor Han-Ling Liu's lab, and they published a study where they took 800 nanometer, 850 nanometer, and 1064 nanometer lasers, and they shined it on the forearm, and they measured the amount of response to the different wavelengths of stimulation in terms of something called oxygenated hemoglobin and cytochrome C oxidase, which I talked about before. So what they showed was that there was a 100% difference in the amount of oxygenated and deoxygenated hemoglobin and cytochrome C oxidase produced by the 1064 compared to the 800 and the 850. So from a biological point of view, there's more bang for the buck biologically, and that's a very important thing. But beyond that, we're starting to see that 1064, 1070 actually has specific impacts on things called chaperone proteins, which are the proteins that get released when the cells are under duress, under stress, and at risk of dying. And one of the last-ditch efforts that the cell goes through in order to protect itself is to release these heat shock proteins. And what we found is that more of those very specific proteins get released with the 1070 that then mitigate or prevent the cell death. So that becomes a really important factor in why we chose 1070. And we're seeing that there may very well be significant differences between the 800s and the 1070, 1100s, but more specifically in terms of maybe the viability of a cell as opposed to the rapidity and speed at which the cell can generate new neurons and new synapses, new dendrites. So you may be seeing that there's going to be a time in the not too distant future where what we're going to be doing is combining these different infrared LEDs in a single device.
Yeah, cool. That's really cool. Now, there's no denying that your products are quite expensive, $3,000, $5,000. Is it fair to assume that the LEDs required for the 1070, 1060 nanometer wavelengths are a lot more expensive than the mass-produced 850s and 810s? Yeah, I thought that may be the case.
Yeah, we're into dollars and not cents.
Yeah. And how many LEDs are in the headsets? About 250 odd, is it?
260, yeah. And it'll be closer to 300 in the next generation.
No.
But we're seeing that the impact doesn't necessarily have to do with the power.
Yes.
It can have to do with the duration, but I think it also has to do with the intensity and the pulse rate and the specificity of what we can deliver for people based on who they are and the individualized precision that we can bring to delivering that treatment. As far as the expense goes, I don't mean this in a snarky way, but I really think that people need to understand that they need to divide the cost of the device into the rest of their life.
Totally.
Their entire life.
Yeah, no, totally. I review a lot of infrared saunas and things like that, and that $10,000, and people were like, yeah, cool, we're happy to spend the money, and it's I suppose it's just coming from that real light therapy space where people are like, oh, I can go out and buy a panel with 1,000 300-400 LEDs for $1,000, and now I get this little headset. But the main difference, and this is what we were talking about before we hit record, was you're in a field that's a lot more specialized, and it's we're working with the brain here, and obviously with your background, whereas maybe some of these panels which have been super effective for inflammation and wound healing and stuff like that, and I don't mean to take this away from the panels because it literally has been a life changer for me, but
it's not right.
It's a lesser science, I guess, in a way. So no, I understand that, and you are getting it's not just the headset, you're getting the device, the software, all the programs and that, of course.
And you're getting, and in the more expensive clinical program, you're getting 3 months of clinical consultation with me or one of the other clinicians,
right,
who are going to be working very directly with you for 3 months as part of the package. So it's a completely different thing.
Totally.
Because we're in a different realm.
Yeah, no, 100%. I get it. So with the penetration, so you're saying that 1060, 1070 has better penetration. I'm really curious as to how this works. Does it actually penetrate through the skull, or is it more just irradiating the blood and then that's in turn having systemic? It is getting through.
Yes, and yes, and yes.
Right. Okay.
So it definitely penetrates. I mean, we think about X-rays. Just further up so we're just moving further and further up the wavelengths to faster and faster wavelengths, containing more energy, delivering more energy.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So okay, and then another quick thing I want to bring up. I've got a spectrometer here, just a little handheld one. It only tests up to 1050 nanometers. So when I was playing around with the headset, I noticed there was quite a lot of light coming around the 1030, 1035 nanometers, and then it dropped down a little bit. Is that something that you guys are aware of as well? Like, it is a bit of a range?
Spread. Oh, it's definitely a spread. And we're going to we're working on increasing and the specificity of the peak of the peak measure, but we're getting up to around 1070. And I think one of the other things that we're having to do is work with our manufacturers to be able to source the diodes from sources that are really quality minded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges that we have as a company, is really being able to develop those quality manufacturers and sources so that we can reliably provide the kind of products that we want. And we're working a lot on getting that worked out now. And in the future, it's going to be something we're hoping we're going to be able to have much more control over, because we're going to try and own as much of the, supply chain as we can.
Got it. And then how does your headset compare to the, and again, I don't know how to pronounce this properly, the Vielight or Vielight? And what's the big differences there? That is something I have played with in the past, and I get a lot of people, they've been around for a long time. So what are the, yeah.
Do we have to do anything else?
Well, could you touch on so they use the 810 as well, don't they? Or is 850? What do they use actually?
No, it's only 810.
810, yeah. Yeah, so that, and I actually reviewed their headset years ago before I knew much about the brain health and photobiomodulation. And yeah, the thing that annoyed me the most, I used it for the review and then I gave up because I was like, I hate all the wires and I hate the headset. So I totally get that.
So,
what about?
that's what I.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, wait. See how I've arranged the arrays?
Yeah.
I pushed them all together.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. I see.
And I stacked them on top of each other.
Yeah.
And what I did was I made a video of using it this way, then this way, then this way, then this way.
Yeah. Right.
And then this way. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So what I was trying to do was this.
Yeah.
But this didn't exist.
Got it. Yeah.
So until we completed the research on the device that was 900 LEDs, the Cognito light, which is on my website, right? On the Quiet Mind website. So you can go back and take a look at the Cognito light. It was, Darth Vader meets Doctor Who.
Yeah.
All right. But it was a big device with eye ports and everything. I was trying to find something on the market that I could give to the people in our research once they gave back the Cognito light, because it was not a product, it was a prototype. But people were saying, well, wait a minute, why don't you just go get another Cognito light and let me keep this one? And I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. I mean, this is research. That's not a real thing. They said, what do you mean it's not a real thing? Look at my wife. I'm like, no, I don't mean real like that. So, I got into this problem and I realized, wait, they're right. I'm wrong. We need to do something for these people. That's why I went to the Vielight in 2016. And until we finished the research on the Cognito light, and then I could go and design this as the next step after the Cognito light, then I had this. Then I didn't need that anymore.
Makes sense. What about the intranasal approach? Do you think, is that something you've looked into? Hey, if you're finding value in this video, please hit the like button below and also hit the subscribe button. A lot of time and effort has gone into producing this video. By hitting the like and subscribe button, it indicates to me that yes, people do enjoy this content and I should keep doing more of it.
There's a picture on the Quiet Mind website of this.
Yeah, okay.
So this is a 1070 intranasal device. We're going to use it now in an aggregated case series research design for people who are struggling with long COVID brain fog. Because did you see the paper that just came out?
I did, and that was going to be something I was going to ask you about. Yep.
So one of the things that we're trying to determine is, because I published a paper with my colleagues at the University of at Durham University in UK on how you might use 1070 intranasally or in any way to mitigate the infectivity, the virulence, and the post-infection neurological damage that is coming to 10 to 30% of everyone who's gotten COVID, regardless of severity of symptoms. So since we know that there's 200 million people who are potentially going to experience some kind of cardiovascular or neurological injury, we know that people are going to sustain that kind of injury, level of injury, and we want to find low-cost ways of doing something about it.
Yeah.
So we know that 1070 can do that. And the logic behind this is that the primary point of entry for COVID is in the intranasal cavity.
Right. Yeah.
So if you can direct the light to where where the virus is, you can kill it before it gets in.
Yeah, right. Interesting. So that's something that you guys will be working on, could see launching.
We're working on it now. We've got them available for clinicians to purchase off the website at Quiet Mind Foundation's website.
Okay, cool. I'll put links to all this below. So you touched on that long COVID study. Would you be able to give the viewers a quick rundown on that, on what the conclusions were, and also maybe touch on other benefits that people are having with your products?
Okay, well, the COVID study was conducted by Praveen Irani and Robert Bowen from University of Buffalo. So Dr. Bowen is the one of the professors in the new photobiomodulation program at Shepherd University in West Virginia, and Dr. Irani is a professor of dentistry and an expert in laser dentistry, University of Buffalo. They took the NovoThor whole body stimulation bed, and it has up to 940 nanometer. It's got a couple of different wavelengths in it. And they had people randomly assigned to either the NovoThor bed or the Neuradiant helmet. And they had 14 people, and they assigned 7 to each group. And what they then did was they did the quantitative EEG. They also did something called event-related potentials, which is a different form of measurement of brain response to stimulation. They then did the regular cognitive assessment that you give to people called the Montreal, the MoCA. Then they did 2 neuropsych tests that get at executive functioning and memory. One of them is the digit symbol substitution, and the other one is the trail making test, A and B. And that would give them an overall sense of how somebody's brain fog had diminished or not. They then equalized the delivery of photonic energy in both the devices. Mm-hmm. So by doing that, they could have an apples to apples comparison. So they did 14 minutes in the NovoThor bed 3 times a week, and they did 14 minutes of the Neuradiant at full power. That means 100% duty cycle. So there was no pulsing.
Okay.
So they compare. So that's how they did it. And by doing that, they could equalize the delivery and say, this is, these are the similar, and they measured it, and it was all pretty close to equal in both approaches, both interventions. So they did it 3 times a week, 14 minutes for 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the month, they did a second set of testing midway after 2 weeks, and then they did another set of testing after a month. All 14 people recovered completely from brain fog. And these are people who were selected by virtue of the fact that they had been suffering with these symptoms for no less than 5 months after having COVID.
Yeah. Well,
so everybody had to have at least 5 months of symptoms before they could be admitted into the study. Yeah. And then they found every single person, regardless of which treatment, every single person got better. They were either back to baseline or, not surprisingly with some people, they were even better than they were before baseline.
Wow.
So the Dr. Bowen conducted some after study interviews with people and just had them say, so what was it like? And then he recorded what they said. And they had a bunch of different reports, most of whom were saying, my thinking is better, my reaction time is better, my mood is certainly improved, and I definitely, get up and I'm looking forward to the day, things like that. Or I'm actually better than I was before the treatment.
Mm. Fascinating. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. So who's a typical customer of your products? Like, what are the health conditions that they're trying to address or treat?
Well, let's be clear. The treatment that we're doing isn't a treatment, right?
Okay.
Right, because we're not FDA approved yet. We're working on it. So we're basically looking at brain health and wellness,
mm-hmm.
and we're asking people to be conscious of that this is not a medical device. It's not covered by insurance. It's none of that, but that we're working in that realm of brain health and wellness. So with that said, people are coming because they want to improve their memory. They want to improve their mood. They really are coming. A lot of people are coming because of fatigue and stress. Some people have had histories where they've had multiple concussions, or they've had multiple exposures to general anesthesia and have noticed that their brain didn't work as well after the anesthesia.
Yeah, right.
Some people have had reactions to certain classes of psychiatric medications.
Wow.
Where they've lost energy, hard to focus, things like that. And they're trying to do something to improve their level of energy that way. So some people have had motor problems like Parkinson's,
yep.
and they're starting to use the treatment, the Neuradiant, for working on improving their motor flexibility. And what we saw from the Cognitolight study that we did in Texas, at Texas A&M's hospital with Baylor Scott and White Hospital, some of the people that we did the original research with, they also had dementia and Parkinson's. And those people reported significant improvement in their Parkinson's symptoms along with improvement in their dementia symptoms.
Well, amazing. So then someone like myself, no major brain trauma or brain issues, at least that I'm aware of. Right. If I am looking to, like you said, optimize brain health and function, improve those things, what would you recommend as a protocol? Now, before I finish the question, I should mention that the device actually comes with some preset programs, and they do a really good job of explaining, this one's for energizing and increasing blood flow and that. Is it simply a matter of doing a couple of those sessions a few times a week? Yeah, it's pretty easy, huh?
It could. I would certainly recommend everybody read and watch videos that we've developed for how to use it. But we certainly want to encourage people to use the preset programs for what they say they're for. Mm. And we also built in the custom protocol feature so that once people get a feel for what their reaction to the different presets is, they can then start to modify the overall stimulation in the direction that helped them even more. Yeah. That said, one of the things that I always want to make clear in these kind of presentations is the photobiomodulation is not to be thought of in the same way that we think about American capitalism. More is not always better. And it's really important that we get that point across.
Yeah.
Okay? So less can be more in this realm much more frequently than more is better.
Yeah.
And it's really needs to be made clear.
Yeah, no, and it's a good point, because it's something we're seeing in all sorts of red light therapy products now where, the technology and the prices come down, the power's up super high, and it's become a marketing play. But what's funny, you talk about that, and I read all the manuals, and because obviously I have a unit here I've been playing around with, And I read everything, and it's, I remember it saying like, start on one of the shorter sessions or lower intensity. And I was like, no, I'm going straight forward. And I put on the glow setting, 10 minutes, no pulsing, full intensity. And I remember afterwards, I was like, well, like, it was hard to explain. There was a change, but within about 5-10 minutes, I had this like dull headache. Like, just, it was nothing major, but it was kind of like, oh, okay, probably should have jumped straight into the deep pool from day one. But hey, that's what I do, test things out, right?
Yeah. Yes. Jerk.
But I do like how you can customize everything. Like, you can change the intensity, you can change the duration, you can even change the pulse rate, which is pretty cool. But most people, like you said, I mean, the programs in there are quite, you've broken them into pretty good categories, and you just really need to select the one you want and hit start.
And hit start. And one of the things is to think about, there are 6 things that you always want to look out for: dizzy, sleepy, headache, irritable, anxious, and congested. Those are the 6 things you always want to be mindful of. And if you start to notice any bit of any of those, that's when you take the helmet off and turn it off.
Yeah. And
you drink a serious glass of water before you do any treatment.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of
it's explained in the videos.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think I was reading and watching it as I had it running. Like, so don't do what I do, guys. Is there something that one could do to quantify the change? Like, if I went out and did an EEG now and then used your product, the product, and followed a certain protocol for 2 months, would I expect to see some changes on that? Or
that's exactly what we hope people will do.
Yeah,
is empirically validate the changes by looking at the different areas of the brain and the different responses in the brain that we can show with the QEEG, right? Which is a normed, reliable assessment that's been used here in the United States. It's admissible in court, right? And it's been used as expert testimony. Yeah, there is over 7,000 papers on QEEG in the peer-reviewed literature. This is a very well-established technology.
Cool.
So we want people to use the QEEG pre and post and ongoing, maybe even every 3, 4, 6 months. And we use that to guide people in the clinical consultation ongoing, which is why I say, divide the device into the rest of your life, because you're going to be using it forever.
Yeah, totally. And that's something I might look into. I might flick you an email afterwards and we can sort out some particular tests and protocols. The next question I have, and I don't know what you're going to say here, but I know people are still going to ask me this question. So if you've got a red light therapy panel here, this particular product's emitting, I think, 850, maybe some 810, and your red light in your 600 range.
Right.
If we were to see a panel like this come out with 1070 or 1050 or 1060, would something like this, how would it be different to your product? Obviously, the price will be a lot higher, but is the main benefit the functionality, the treatment area?
Hey,
yeah.
So remember when you were a kid and you got your first magnifying glass, and you went outside with the magnifying glass and you started setting fire to the grass?
Yeah, right.
It's because of the concavity of the lens.
Mm-hmm.
So the concavity of the lens means that you're increasing the power of the light by virtue of having the skull is a concave lens. So the light is being directed much more powerfully through a curved structure.
Makes sense.
So that's a very big part.
Yeah. So this is a specialty product for the brain. Those panels are the products, like we said before, for your sunburn or your wound healing or this or knee.
And certainly there are products now coming out where there's a headband and a pad
Mm-hmm.
for the gut.
Yeah, right.
So you can then start to influence the gut-brain connection.
Yeah, well,
And that's extremely important and very beneficial.
yeah, really, really cool. And then, so what developments can we expect to see in your products in the coming years? I know you've touched on a few of these, but is there anything else? The EEG thing fascinates me. Is that going to be built into the headset? Wow, that's really cool.
The electrodes will be positioned where they need to be, but adjustable for each person.
This has been really good. I've learned a lot, and yeah, it's quite fascinating what you guys are working on. I'm excited to see, what products you come up with in the future. But of course, I think what you have here is already quite remarkable. Given the studies we've seen on it, and also some of the testimonials and that I've read. So, hey, look, thank you again. And where can people find out more information about yourself, about the products?
Certainly, for me, Quiet Mind Foundation is one place. Neuronic.online is the other link for Neuronic devices. And my phone number is listed somewhere. People can give me a call, and I'll be happy to help. All right. And thank you, Alex. This is really important that we get this information out, even to people on the other side of the world.
But most of my followers are in the US or Canada. So
are they really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I have. I probably have my mum and my wife who watch in New Zealand who watch from down here. No, actually, I don't even think they watch. So it's.
That's funny. Well, look, if anybody's in Philadelphia, I'd be happy to have a cheesesteak and talk about light therapy.
There we go. I feel like I might have to make the trip myself.
Anytime.
Cool. Well, thank you again, and we'll talk again sometime in the future.
All right, Alex. Thank you.
So that is a wrap. What an amazing guy Dr. Berman is, and you can tell he knows his stuff, right? If you want to learn more about the Neuradiant 1070, I'll put a link to the product page below, and if you do want to get one of these, the team over at Neuroinc have provided me a discount code to share with you guys. It is code AlexFergus5. Again, all of this will be below. I'll also put a link to all the products and websites that Dr. Berman and I talked about in this video. If you do have any questions, be sure to reach out directly to Dr. Berman. Otherwise, leave a comment below and I'll make sure him or myself answer it. Oh, and be sure to check out my first impressions review of the Neuradiant 1070. You can do that by clicking here. Otherwise, be sure to subscribe as I will be testing this product in more detail.